Welcome back to the Bonsai Builders podcast. I'm your host, Addison Galambos, and today we are celebrating a milestone, episode 40. Thank you all for being on this journey with me. If you're enjoying the show, please subscribe or leave a review. It really helps me improve, and I appreciate the feedback. So back into kind of the regularly scheduled things here. We talk about the path to improving a lot, obviously, on this show, but what happens when the person that's guiding you on that path moves to the other side of the world? My guest today is Drew Binkley. Drew is a young, incredibly hungry, advanced hobbyist based in the eastern U.S. He's developed a serious reputation for his high-level Deadwood and carving skills. I think that's the first interaction I had with you, was seeing your video on Bjorn's platform. Speaking of that, he is a dedicated student of Bjorn, who, as we discussed in a past episode, recently packed up and moved his practice back to Japan. So we're going to talk to Drew about his drive to improve, like what makes him tick and what his goals are in bonsai. We're going to talk to him about how to master the carving process, and then we're going to look into how he's defining his path forward. So Drew, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Addison. Pleasure to be here.
So let's start with the origin story. How'd you get bitten by the bonsai bug? And at what point did you kind of transition from weekend hobbyist to, doing this, like putting some serious commitment into bonsai?
Yeah, I guess I was thinking about this today, and I guess it was roughly 7 or 8 years ago. My wife and I were buying and selling a house at the same time. Would never recommend, very stressful. And we were going to treat ourselves to get away. Went to go see a show up in Ohio, and we went to the Franklin Botanical Gardens to kind of kill some time. It's an incredible botanical garden. It's actually very serendipitous, but so we were there. They have like a rotating collection of bonsai trees, and it was actually my first time ever seeing one in person. And I kind of like walked through, looked at a couple, but I came to this one in particular. It was a buttonwood tree, which I didn't know what a buttonwood was at the time, but it looked, I wish I would have taken a photo of it. I can't believe I didn't, but I just had this really powerful moment standing in front of it where, it's like looking at the little name tag in front of it, and it said the species, the estimated age, the time and training, all that stuff. And the estimated age was like 350, 375, something like that. 300 plus. And I just remember having this moment of like, wait a minute. So this tree is older than America. Okay, so that means how many hands did this tree pass through? How much time, and just the care that this tree had to get for me to have this moment standing in front of it, realizing all this stuff. It was just really, really impactful. So I immediately, when we got back home, I just started Googling like crazy, and like, I want to know as much about this as possible. That was the first moment where I became really, really curious about it. And then I guess it was like once the house was sold, we moved in and dust settled. I went from no land to an acre of land and a backyard and like this brand new canvas of like whatever I want my place to be. And so then I was like, kind of felt I had the permission to like really get curious about bonsai, and I went full on, man. I mean, I know this is like a really common thing because I've listened to your podcast, I listened to every bonsai related podcast, and like I went from no trees to like 30 nursery stock trees in a matter of a couple of months, to a point to where my wife, Alicia, bless her, I love her so much, she's like my biggest supporter. At one point, like politely, it was just like, do we need to talk about this? Like, I keep noticing a new tree every time I come out here, it feels like. So yeah, I just went full on. And then COVID happened. Well, I kind of started right before COVID. And so then I'm like studying in a vacuum, had no one to like riff on or ask questions about, because our local club here in Nashville, they weren't doing meetings. So Mariah member, Bonsai-U member, by myself for about a year. And then finally the club had the first meeting, and walked in, and this very sweet lady who later became my mentor, I was the first person that introduced herself to me and like welcomed me into the club. And man, I was like so nervous going to that first club meeting. Fast forward, it was great. I came home, and the first thing I said when I walked in the door was just like, I found my people. I finally have people that I can like nerd out and ask questions. And that was just like a sponge. I still am to this day. There's a lot of other stuff that happened. One that was, I still can't believe that I was accepted, but I won the Ben Oki scholarship in 2023. It was, to answer your question, when did it go from just scratching an itch to like get really serious about it? It was around 2022. I'd been doing it for about 2 years. And that same lady, Eileen, she kind of like took me under her wing really quickly because she saw that I was really interested in it. And so I would go to her house once or twice a month for a better part of a year. I would help her in her garden and work on her trees. And I would bring my dinky little nursery stock trees and she would show me what to do. And I guess she saw how that I was more than just interested. Like I wanted to get really good at it. So yeah, she took me under her wing really quickly. And about that time, I remember thinking like, if I'm going to get, this is about 2 years of doing it. I was like, if I want to get really good at this, I feel like the only way to do that is to like, I mean, the videos of Mirai and Bjorn's platform are great. But as you and I and everyone listening know, it takes, you can watch as many videos, listen to as many podcasts, absorb all the information. But until you have the hands-on, it's like, for me, that's when it like really sinks in and it clicks. So I was like, I need to study with someone, like a professional of some sort. But at the time, I just did not have the resources to do that. And honestly, I didn't even know Bjorn was in my backyard. He lives 12 miles from, well, had lived 12 miles from where I currently live. And Eileen was a student of his. And long story short, she came up to me at a meeting one day and was like, look, I see how much you are passionate about this. I really want to support you and I want to be a patron. So I've sold one of my trees to Bjorn and half of that money is going to pay for half of your tuition at Bjorn's. Dude, talk about noodle legs. Like I almost collapsed in just like disbelief and gratefulness, you know. It's like, because it was something I wanted so bad, but it was like, it just seemed so out of reach because of the money aspect of it. And so, yeah, she got me in. I somehow lucked out because Bjorn has had a waiting list ever since he started his courses. And there was, because I guess some people dropped out or couldn't attend, that like, that was my in. She told me in September, I emailed Bjorn and he's like, yeah, actually, if you can be here next month, you can join Group F. And so I did. And I mean, just from then on, it was like everything changed. I feel like I've been talking for 10 minutes, so I'll stop there and let you ask.
No, that's
questions.
such an amazing story. That's so,
yeah.
Hearing how that mentorship changed your journey and opened up doors for you is really powerful. And like that happened through the club, which is really cool to hear. One thing you said at the beginning that really struck me, you said something, I can't remember the exact wording, but along the lines of whenever you got your own space in a larger backyard, you suddenly had permission to be able to explore bonsai, right? Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about that? How big of a role that your change in space played in your ability to do bonsai?
Oh, man. The best way I could sum it, I wish I could pull this picture up quick enough, but the day that we moved into the house, we went from a condominium. My wife had purchased it and it was an amazing house, but we literally had a deck and that was it. There was, there was grass and stuff, but it wasn't ours. So I tried like growing pepper plants and tomatoes in little pots. And I grew up with a mother and a grandmother who were huge green thumbs, like plants everywhere. They never grew vegetables, but flowers, moss, anything you could think of that aside from vegetables, they were growing it. And I grew up around that. So I always had this like knack and like want to explore that, but I never had the space. So going back to when we moved in here, there's this photo of me that's like, I'm like sprawled out laying in our backyard and I'm just like eyes closed. And I remember just being it's probably the most grateful feeling I've ever had in my entire life of like, this is mine. Like this small plot is mine. And I immediately kind of started looking at it like it's a canvas. Like I could do whatever I want here, with the right resources, but it just immediately started dreaming, and like within a week or two, it was like, all right, we got to plant a garden. And this was in November. And I was like, wait, you can't actually plant a garden. So let's plant a garden. So I spent all winter like planning. But yeah, it was the calendar. It was about half of a calendar year once we moved in. That's when I was like, wait a minute, bonsai, I have space to do that now. And that's when I started like really thinking about that. And within 6 months, I built that. Like, if you go on Reddit in the bonsai subreddit, there's I can't believe I'm blanking on the guy's name. He's like notorious, but he shared these blueprints of this like 3-tiered bonsai bench. He lives in England. It's like small something.
Yeah, I know. Yes, small trunks.
Yes.
I think is his bonsai bench design.
Yep.
Yeah, that's like stickied in the wiki.
Yep, I built that almost immediately, so I could have my little like dedicated space, and it was all like Monrova or Isley nursery container pots and just lined in trees. But anyways, did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think it's kind of it's the oxymoron of bonsai hobbyship, where it's like it's hard to do without time, money, and space, right? And it's like when you're early in your career or younger, you often don't have those things, right? And so it's very hard to, even if you have an itch for bonsai earlier in life when you're young, like you can, do it at your parents' house and things like that when you're young, but then you all of a sudden go to college or you start your career, and like there's competing priorities. And it was just interesting to hear that for you, like a major turning point in your journey was whenever you were able to, buy a house with land and, enough space to kind of build a garden, and that kind of opened your dreams up for you. I think that's a cool story to hear about. So if I understood correctly, you were doing bonsai for like 2 to 3 years before you started taking classes with Bjorn, or like that, or you started taking classes at that point with Eileen, or how was what was the transition there?
I mean, Eileen was almost immediately, like within a first couple of months of me going to that first club meeting.
Okay.
Like we just clicked, and she just like gravitated towards me, and like, so I did that for about a year, a little over a year. And then it was 2022, October of 2022 is when I started my first intensive with Bjorn. And I came in, so he did a 3-year program where you meet 2 times a year for 3 years. That's like the Bonsai-U or ASAN intensive. I came in, it was like basically 6 months into. So there were 2 classes that I didn't get to participate in that 3-year program. So I crammed 3 years into 2.5 years, which is basically what that equated to is like the very last year he was here, I had to cram in 2 more intensives in the same year.
Oh, in the same year. Okay.
And that basically was literally 7 days, his last 7 days that he was here. I did 7 days straight of intensives at his place. And it was me, John, I think, and Brian of the Bonsai Learning Center, and Bjorn were the last people at Bjorn's garden that last week he was here. It was crazy. It was a really cool experience.
I was thinking to talk about this a little later, but since we've kind of gotten onto the topic, obviously Bjorn's an amazing teacher, and obviously having him so close is so impactful. I'm sure it must have been kind of a little bit of a sinking feeling whenever you heard he was leaving. But also there's excitement associated with, now you get to go visit him in Japan. But how did you think of, what was whenever you heard that he was leaving, what was your thought process, and how has that impacted your learning journey in bonsai?
Yeah, great question. How to take it? It was definitely, I don't know. It was like immediately the selfish thought is like, but I'm just getting started. Like, why, but then immediately, because man, we had such amazing conversations in those intensives. Like the group I was in, Group F, I'm sure everyone who had their own cohort of students, they all had very amazing experiences. But I want to say like there was something about our group that was a little special. I've made lifelong friends from that group. Shout out to Sean, Jill, and Janos. I will be studying, practicing, and learning alongside them for the rest of my life. But yeah, once he kind of like let it out and gave the announcement, we just all talked about it. And man, I remember, I'll never forget, And I think about it often when I see his videos and his garden and stuff, is like how stoked and excited he was, like, about just dreaming this new phase, this like thing that he always wanted to do. We didn't know that it was always his plan, even though I feel like he was kind of hinting at it all along. That like I was just more excited for him than I was bummed for myself, like genuinely. And yeah, another thing that I realize now, because I'm studying with other professionals that I have to travel with, is I realized like how incredibly lucky I was to live 12 miles from him. I could be at his house in like 18 minutes. And in fact, like that kind of turned into, I was watering his garden for him. And during the winter months, whenever he would go back to Japan. And what I didn't know, and we didn't know, is that it was those trips that he was going back to is whenever he was buying his plot of land, when he was hiring his architects. You know, I didn't know that. It was just kind of interesting in hindsight. But yeah, it was an incredible experience. Still to this day, I'm like, man, I got to do that, because he is one of the most genuine, down-to-earth, approachable, and he's like one of the best teachers I've ever had. I can say that with full confidence. Not to say he's better than anyone, but he just has his own way of teaching, and the way he does stuff is just really, really cool. I'm really excited for him, and I really hope, not to say I never had a drive to go to Japan. I've always been fascinated with it, but I've never, even though I've been doing this for about 6 years now, I've never had this like, I got to go to the Kokofu. I got to go see the Japanese trees. Like, I respect it wholeheartedly, but it's never been a had to. But now that Bjorn's there, it's like the best excuse to want to go back to see his garden and hopefully hop on one of his like his little mini intensives that he's doing with students there. I'm a rambler, so I hope.
No, this is all perfect.
Like word salad.
It's exactly what I was hoping to learn about. Yeah, so you were enabling Bjorn, it sounds like, to go to Japan.
Right.
It's all your fault.
Yeah,
watering his trees in the winter.
Alive.
Yeah. That's really cool. When you say your cohort is special, can you put that into words a little bit more? Like what about your cohort, Class F, was?
Yeah. The best way I can describe it, especially for Sean, Jill, and Janos, that it was like we were the core members, and there was a couple of others that would just kind of like swing door in, you know, like I think there was 1 or 2 people that were there more than one class, but we were the 4 that like we did every class together.
All 3 years.
Yeah, and they actually, because I did it in 2.5, they studied together the 6 months before I did, so they already had like some chemistry or whatever. And I remember going to that first intensive, I was so intimidated, man. So intimidated. And like Jill was the first person I saw. And I remember like walking into his like gates, and she's like, "Hey, what's up? Welcome. Just go look at some kick-ass trees, man." I was just like, okay. And anyways, the best way I could sum them up is that we're all just like champions for one another. Like we have a group chat, pings almost daily. At least once a week, someone's chiming in with something. And I've learned so much from them. And I feel like I've contributed to the learning of teaching them some things too. But yeah, like once I met them after that first class, I was just like, well, you guys are coming back. Like, why don't you just stay at my house? And I remember them just being like, do you really mean that? And I was just like, yeah, like I'm 12 miles away. And I now know that I was saving them so much money by not renting a hotel room, and like we were cooking food in the house, because I'm now studying with Todd and I've got to do all the traveling and booking a room. So I think it was just them having a place that they could come here, and like we would work on trees after 8-10 hour days at Bjorn's. We would come back here and just keep going until like midnight, and then wake up at 6, head over at 7. Like we were so hungry and just like
just locked in to learn that knowledge. Dude. And I'm sure Bjorn was feeding off that energy too. So it's just a great environment. That's awesome. So. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. It's a huge, first of all, I just wanted to mention that I'm sure a lot of other people have gone through that as well, where they sign up for their first intensive and they go to the class and they're like, okay, I've done stuff at my local level. I've learned online, but how are my skills going to stack up against all these other people who are coming to these classes? It's a good reminder for all of us who are doing that for the first time or are experienced members of these classes to really welcome and make everybody feel welcomed and appreciated at these classes, right? Because these people, are going to become the people that you're doing bonsai with for the rest of your, the rest of your life. So it makes sense to really connect and value them, because it's not something that's super mainstream, right? There's not an unlimited number of people doing this. And, we want to make sure that everyone has a good experience.
Yeah. And what I've found, if I could just like piggyback off of that, is in my club and also in like any of the classes that I've done with intensives, the new people I meet, sometimes they're reoccurring. Sometimes it's like you get that one weekend with them. It is such an eclectic group, or I don't know how to explain it other than like I've met some of the most unique people in my life that I don't think bonsai has afforded me to meet them, because we all know this is one of the nerdiest. You could be an AFOL, like a Lego fan for life. That's pretty nerdy. I dabbled in that, so I kind of touched that a little bit. But like, there's something about bonsai where you get like nerdy, super obsessive, attention to detail, blah, 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 all this stuff. But also, I think because we're dealing with like living things, for the most part, the people are well grounded, if that makes any sense. Like the people have this just like this sense of care and empathy and love. I don't know. That's like a common thread that I've kind of picked up on. I can definitely say that that's true about my club and Jill, Sean, and Janos. Like, it's just connected with them on this like unspoken level.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't really thought much about that. But I mean, yeah, definitely within my club, I feel really blessed to meet all these other people who are just so caring and kind. And I guess that could relate to, we're caring for this living thing, right? And we're putting so much energy into it. So there's probably some common thread there.
Yeah.
Super cool observation. So I know you kind of glossed over it, but you're in Nashville, or right outside Nashville, right? That's where you live?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So I'm curious about how do you structure your practice? Obviously, if you listen to you've listened to the podcast, so you know that I'm obsessed with like thinking about curriculums. But I'm curious for you, like, are there discrete phases in your journey as you've learned? I mean, obviously you're taking in Bjorn's intensives and learning in his, like, whatever curriculum he's laid out. But I'm curious how you transition that then to your own trees, and how you're transitioning that to, now that you're responsible for the curriculum, how are you kind of organizing how you progress in bonsai?
Yeah, that's another great question. So once Bjorn left and we realized like, okay, that was an amazing experience, I immediately told myself, it was like, I have to keep this momentum no matter the cost. 100%. Because I learned so much in such a short time. It blew my mind. And it wasn't immediate that I was like, I'm like super confident with my trees. That's not true. But I just had this feeling of like, as driven as I was, I realized the importance of it. So the momentum was imperative, no matter what it costs, like I said. So I immediately was like, all right, I got to study with someone else. Who's that? And I thought long and hard and blah, blah, blah. And ultimately, I think the study group with Shannon Sawyer came up first, because he's really in with our club, because he's in Lenore City. It's like 2.5 hours away. That got kicked up in our club. So I immediately hopped on that. We meet 4 times a year. And then I did about a half a year of that. And I was like, I need to go to someone I really look up to. I look up to Shannon, but he's Shohin specific. And Todd Schlafer was the first one. It was like, I got to go study with him. So I did. And I've been going on my 2nd year of that, and it's been phenomenal. Could not recommend it enough to anyone. He's an incredible teacher, awesome human. But I guess, I tend to trail off, and I'm going to try to like reel myself back in. But to go back, how'd you ask? Like, how do I keep
how do you structure your practice? I'm curious of things like, are you
daily?
Well,
like daily or weekly or?
Well, I mean, even just so, for example, how I kind of think of it is like I choose some set of skills that I want to develop. I'm like, okay, I want to get good at refining junipers, or I want to get good at like doing big bends on a Yamadori or whatever, right? Like whatever these things are that I think I'm deficient in, I kind of like call them out and then I try to figure out a way to get reps and get instruction on that thing, right? So I'm just curious, like, what your process is, if you're orienting it around like your specific collection, if you're orienting it around some specific goal. I think your point on like you got to keep the momentum up is so right. Whenever you've captured something that is helping you learn quickly, like that momentum is so important to just find whatever way you can to preserve. So I think you did the right thing of like treating it with urgency. But yeah, just curious how you're like, how do you decide if you're going to go to Todd's in spring versus winter or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm just curious about those questions.
So I screen print for a living, and I'm like manning a poster press, and it's kind of the same repetitive motion. You got to pay attention to registration and stuff. But because of that, I could just put my phone on the press and I would literally watch Mirai Live and Bonsai-U videos 6 to 8 hours a day while I'm printing. Like, I'm not exaggerating. I've probably watched every video on Mirai and Bonsai-U, sometimes multiple times, especially if it's something that was just like blew my mind. Like, what? Like, how? I don't have the material to even do this technique, but like, this is incredible. I'd rewatch it or whatever. I say that because like, I would be just like revving myself up at work so that the moment I got home, if it was something I could do, I would go try to do that on my trees. And granted, there were a lot of failed attempts, a lot of like things I look at and like laugh at myself endearingly of like, I remember the first time I wanted to use raffia, and I came home and I got it and blah, blah, blah. And I did it and I was so stoked and proud. And then now I realize like I did it totally wrong. It didn't actually achieve what it should have achieved, but I learned how to do raffia, at least apply it. And so that's Mirai and Bonsai-U are very integral in my own like personal daily drives of like trying to just like try things out and then, fail or succeed daily, weekly. But then like you asked the question of how did I make the decision to go study with Todd in particular? Well, that's easy to answer. Is that like spruce is one of my favorite species. Hinoki and spruce. Bjorn, I knew that he was like the king of Hinoki. And when I started studying with him, I immediately realized this is true. So like I learned so much about handling Hinoki cypress with Bjorn. And then with Todd, it's like I wanted to get better with pines and spruce in particular. And Todd Schlafer, in my opinion, next to Ryan Neal, the way they handle the alpine look of spruce is kind of, I don't know, it's so unique. It's only they do it the way they do it, in my opinion. And I wanted to learn that. Even though I live in Nashville, Tennessee, like I don't see these types of trees in my own environment, but I have such respect and I don't know, awe for them because of the way they look and they just scream age. And anyways, so there's
something that captures you about those spruces that Todd collects. I've taken classes with Todd as well, and it was exactly the same thing. I was like, wow, I really like these spruces. They're so cool.
Yeah.
And I love how amazing. He handles them. Can you keep spruce in Nashville?
Yeah.
Will it do well over? Okay. I guess you guys get winter.
Yeah, Colorado spruce, we can do fine. They can, we do have very hot, humid summers, especially end of July into August. It can be, 105 with 90% humidity. It's really brutal. But I learned from Bjorn and then also vetting with Todd, like, we just got to have shade structure. And like on the really hot days, I'll mist them multiple times a day just so the foliage, doesn't get too dried out or whatever. But like one of my favorite species, Ezo, I love Ezo spruce, but like I don't think we can successfully grow them in Tennessee. It would be a struggle. So I'm not even going to try there. But yeah, Todd and the way he handles spruce is I got to learn that. So I've been soaking it and eating every minute of it so far. It's been great.
Awesome. Yeah, glad that you were able to kind of capture that momentum and that there's excitement to look forward to with going to visit Bjorn in Japan and then also still continuing your learning journey. I guess whenever Bjorn was here, were you able to kind of go over to his garden kind of ad hoc sometimes since you were so close to just like volunteer and help with things, or how did that kind of work? Or were you only there for classes really?
No, we did a couple of times. Like there was a few times with our club where like he had an open house. I think this was like 2023 or 20. No, actually it was 2022. It was in the spring of that because it was before I was a student. Went over and like, I don't know, 10 members in the club went and we just like weeded the trees in his garden, just to kind of like help spruce up his place. And then I went over whenever we filmed the Deadwood video that I did with him. I went over for like 2 or 3 days. But no, I guess if you're asking, did I ever just go over and like hang out? Like, no, that was because the guy was so incredibly busy. Like, I don't know how Bjorn does what Bjorn does. He's superhuman. I'm convinced. Like, it's like, especially
making all of his content and doing all of his bonsai work and taking care of his family
and intensives 5 days a week from April to November with like a short break in the summer months. And then, yeah, like the content he puts on Bonsai-U, he edits all of it himself. He shoots it all himself. Like, the guy's superhuman. So all that to say, the last thing I'm going to do is on his day off be like, hey man, can I come over and look and play with your trees? Like, so it's just like a respected boundary, even though I really thought about it. I really wanted to.
Makes sense. So what are your, kind of rounding out the picture of Drew, what are your goals in bonsai? You know, you're clearly obsessed with it. I'm curious, like, have you thought of what's longer term for you, or what's kind of the long-term goals in bonsai?
Yeah, it's a fluid thing, but I love it so much, and I can say with full confidence I'll be doing it for the rest of my life in whatever capacity possible. Currently, and this has been probably the better part of a year, is like I do have a lot of want to do this. I hesitate to say the word professionally because it's such a big word for me, or it's like the concept of it, and I say that because the people that I look up to that are the professionals and like how good they are at what they do, I'm so far, but I feel like I'm striving to get as good as they are. So it's really weird and somewhat uncomfortable for me to say, I have the drive to do this professionally. But in truth, I do. I do want to do it in whatever capacity possible, but to also be realistic of like where I am in my journey and my knowledge. Like, I'm not going to like bite off more than I know I'm capable of and just like fake it until I make it. Although we all know that you got to do a little bit of that.
You got to do a little bit of that, yeah.
You got to do a little bit of that because you have to be in those scenarios to understand how you're going to react or respond and handle it. And thankfully, I've actually experienced that, the past couple of years. And so I do want to do this, I say semi-professionally for now, because I do co-own and operate a small business, and like, there's no way I can just like leave what I'm doing now to like really dive into bonsai. So it's like I'm doing it as much as I can on the side. And then who knows what will happen in the near future, that maybe one day things will change where I can do it even more. I'm definitely like working towards that.
Awesome.
But I guess to add, like in the meantime, it's like whatever I can do, teaching with workshops and whatever money I make from bonsai professionally just goes back into reinvesting in myself. Like, I gave myself a really hard rule that like this past year and a half, it's like I'm not spending any more money on trees. Any money extra resources I have goes directly back into my self-education, and I've fully succeeded at that, and it's been great.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really impressive, actually. And I think a lot of people will relate to that idea of, especially I mean, we've been doing bonsai for a while, but I feel like we both feel like we're not at the like professional level, or like at the level of skill that, we see demonstrated in other people in the community. there's more to go, right? So I think that idea of reinvesting in yourself as the most important factor is a very, very interesting point. I think something that I've kind of struggled with a little bit too, though, is, a really nice tree can make up for a lot of a lack of skill too.
100%.
It's like demonstrating decent skills on a nursery stock tree versus on a, really nice Yamadori, if it's a really nice piece of material versus versus a nursery stock tree. So there is also something to be said for like bonsai trees take a long time to make. And so the investments you make in trees now, like those really high quality trees, they might not be available in the future. And like they might not be at the, if you develop it for 10 years, hopefully it looks a lot better than it does today, right? So that's the thing I struggle with a little bit too when I'm looking about, do I want to spend money on education or trees? Is that trees can also be their own form of education and also help you establish the legitimacy of, and like establish, these are the results that I'm able to get over time, right? So I think there's kind of two factors to it, but yeah.
Yeah, and in my case, if I can just add to that, is that like, again, I don't know how it happened, but it fell into my lap and I'm grateful for it. But like some trees of my mentor and a few other people in our club that had like trees that were well into refinement, we worked out a deal and I was able to acquire them. So, like pretty quickly, I went from, nursery stock, but also a little pre-bonsai developed that I acquired at Bjorn or Todd's or whatever. I was able to bring in a number of trees that are in full-blown refinement mode over the past 2 years. And that having those scratch the itch of like, I need that
level of quality.
Exactly. Like a finished tree that you can look at and admire. Like, of course, there's always things you can do to it. But, when we get into this hobby or this practice, like you're chasing this, what you see bonsai is. Like you want to be able to visualize and experience that in your own garden. When you first start out, you quickly realize that's going to take a while unless you have a ton of money and you can just buy it. And I don't have that situation. So I lucked out in acquiring some trees that immediately I realized like, okay, now I got to get better at these refinement techniques. And that's been very fruitful and challenging in the best way for me.
Yeah, it's interesting as my collection has aged along with my skills, you just realize there's all these different phases of developing a bonsai. It's not like, the stuff that I do for the first styling, like the techniques change and differ and like how you have to fertilize and just, it's a whole new world as your collection gets older too, right? So having, starting that journey early can be good if you have some trees in the early stages and some trees in the later stages. Then you're getting to practice the gamut of skills. So I think when I first started, I wanted like every tree to be made by me from scratch, quotes. But I think that you're doing yourself a disservice if you do that to some extent, because then you have to wait 5-6 years, whatever, to get from scratch to refinement. And then you're only starting the skills that you need to develop to maintain trees in refinement at that time. So there's a variety of trees in terms of the stage that they're at in development can be helpful for the learning process.
And I was actually going to say, because I know that there are people that listen to this that have either just started or they've been doing it the same number of years that we are, that like, I think it was one of the questions that you had posed is like, what would I recommend for people that would be helpful, at least through my experience? And that
would be great to hear.
and that is like, when you get to a point where you know the basics, you're confident and efficient with wiring, pruning, seasonal things that you need to do. But you're still just stuck with these like early pre-bonsai or nursery stock trees. And like you just said, you realize like, well, it might be 5 to 10 years before this is like a great tree. I would recommend getting a tree that is 1 step or 2 steps ahead of your current collection. Like that gives you a tree that will allow you to practice the techniques that you don't have to wait 5 years on your current trees on. Does that make sense? It's like
Yeah,
you're not just learning like primary, secondary development. You're now in tertiary and refinement, because like you just said, they're multiple different levels and techniques, and then the timing's all different. And then I don't know, for me personally, it just like immediately held me accountable of like, what do I actually know and how well can I do it? So I had to like immediately take myself even more seriously of being the best that I can and continuing to be better at the things I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And like there's connections between each of these phases, right? So doing the things at the end helps you better understand why you're doing the things at the beginning too, right? So, and vice versa. So one thing I wanted to ask you about your kind of professional aspirations, are there aspects of bonsai work that you like or dislike? Like if you were to go pro in bonsai, like as a business, you know, do you want to be teaching? Do you want to be carving? Do you want to be, you know, I don't know, selling pots? Like what you know, what are the areas of the business side of it that entice you? Or you just want to be working on bonsai more?
That's a really good question. I would say, yeah, I'm interested in all of that, except like when it comes to the pots, like I've been dabbling in clay, and it's just for me. It's like I have no desire currently to like be known as a ceramicist or, you know, but yeah, the carving, styling, teaching, like all of those I aspire. And with the Deadwood carving, fortunately been able to do that. And I've worked in Minnesota for 2 workshops, 2 years, 1 workshop each year, and then did a workshop for a club that turned interest into the Chattanooga club. Did a workshop for them. It went really well, to a point to where I just pitched the idea of like, hey, if you guys are like really want to learn some more, I'm involved in my first study group, and it's been amazing, because the thing with the study group is you can return on the same tree and pick back up where you left off. Whereas like workshops are invaluable in their own right, but you do only have like a very limited amount of time to do the work. And sometimes the work doesn't get finished, and then you're like left to go home and hopefully finish it and, you know, actually practice everything that you learned in that class. Where a study group, whatever work we don't finish, we can loop back around. And what I love about Shannon's study group and John Eads too is like, you can make a master plan of like, all right, we're going to do this much here because it's realistic we can finish this. And then when we come back around, we're going to do this. And you can kind of break it up into stages. And I love that aspect of it. So all that to say, we started a study group with the Chattanooga Club. There's 10 students. They're all great people. And I'll be going down there 3 times a year.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's great. And you know, like I really hope to be able to do more of those. I'm open to doing like workshops. There's a couple of opportunities that might flesh out in 2027 that I'm looking forward to. But the study groups are just great because I think the people paying the money get the most out of it. I don't know if you've had experiences, but like I've studied with a couple of professionals in intensives and done workshops with them. And now that I'm on the other side of it, I have so much even more respect for those professionals in a workshop setting, because you might have 5 to 8 people taking a workshop that are all expecting the same amount of attention and learning from you. And you have to ping pong around that room and give them their money's worth, hopefully. And that can be very, very challenging when you're the teacher. Again, that's where like I feel like Bjorn's a little superhuman, because I took an intensive class with him where there were like 10 students in it, and it was unreal. Like that he was able to pull it off and then wake up the next morning. Anyways, that was another
sucks the energy
vomit
out of you for sure.
Oh,
I've only done free workshops for people, so I don't feel any pressure on the money side, I guess.
Well, there you go.
For actual study group stuff. But yeah, that adds a whole other layer to it. And yeah, you want to make sure that everybody has a good experience, and it's hard whenever everybody has different experience levels, right? So they might need different amounts of of like some can work autonomously and you can come in and give them advice, and some like they need you to hold their hand through it, right? And it's like it's hard to balance that, right, as a teacher.
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced that where there's someone in the class that like I just check in and like, this looks great, man. Is there anything you need from me? And then they'll ask me questions and I'll answer them, and then like I can make their rounds and they're still working. And then there are some people, and it's just because of the level that they're at, you tell them, we talk through like doing something or a technique or whatever, and you do it, but you need to go to the next person, and they stop once you leave, and they don't, you know what I mean? Like they're only working whenever you come back around, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's just, I've been in that situation where they haven't gotten to the confidence of, I don't know. It's just where
exactly.
they're at.
It makes sense. Yeah. They're just not, you're just not ready to make the decisions autonomously yet. Yep.
There you go. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Better way of saying it.
Yeah. I have been in those shoes for sure. So let's talk a little bit about carving, because your carving work is insane.
Oh man.
How did this, like, I don't know. I mean, I feel like you're going to be, if not already, you're one of the greats in the US for carving Deadwood. So I definitely within your lifetime, I know you're going to be known as like, Drew is the carving guy in the US, like the Andres Bacoca of the US or something like that, right? Like, I definitely see that in your future. But how did you do wood carving in some other discipline, or like how did you get into wood carving and how did you get so good?
Well, I grew up in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, and there are a lot of chainsaw carving artists. I'm kidding. That was a really bad joke. I did grow up around all that. I never picked up a chainsaw. I was going to say what? I never carved a black bear. Okay. No, that's a great question. I guess for me, I've dabbled in art my whole life. Like I was really into illustration for the majority of my life. And then that turned into me becoming a screen printer so I could print my own artwork. And both of those things kind of demand like an attention to detail, at least how I work, at least what I'm interested in drawing, at least the technicality of printing that I strive for. Kind of by nature, I have a very acute attention to detail. Always have. It's been a strong suit. It's also been to a detriment where I like kill myself over things that most people wouldn't even notice. So I only say that because I've also wondered like how did I'm not going to say I felt like I picked it up so naturally, because like I still have so much to learn. I'm still studying. I by no means have mastered carving, because the fact is like I've been doing this for a little under 6 years. And when you do any practice to Deadwood, it's going to continue to age. So like I've never carved something and seen what it looks like in 25 years. I'm looking forward to that. But so I just always kind of like keep that in check and know that like there's always improvement, blah, blah, blah. But with Deadwood, like for me, I don't even know how I stumbled upon it. I think Harry Harrington was the first person I saw. He bonsai for me in the UK. I have a lot of respect for that guy. And then through him, I learned about Will Badley and Graham Potter and Kevin Wilson. But there was something about Will Badley that like really spoke to me, and that's because of the detail he put into his carving. I was just like, it's like, what's the hardest aspect of Deadwood carving? Sure, let's go into that. So hyper detailed, and I watched everything I could possibly find, listened to every interview. Actually met, blanking on the guy's name, feels so bad. Basically, I met the guy, Robert. I met him at PBE in 2022, and he had a booth and got to talking to him. Come to find out, he was managing Will Badley's U.S. tour dates. And as soon as he said that, I was just like, what? Like, you were helping Will Badley go on tour? Like, can he come to Nashville? Long story short, got him to Nashville, and we did like 2 days of study groups with him. And man, like it was like the same thing I got from when I first started studying with Bjorn. It was just like how much I learned in such a short amount of time. Like I feel like I'd like picked up on the basics just through my own practice and studying. but like seeing how to do it in like the right bits and blah, 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 it just like kind of jettisoned me a little bit further. So yeah, I really dove into that. And then I learned about Andres Bacoca, and he's all hand tools. And there's another guy, Francis Jecker. He's got a book called Deadwood. Yeah, it's right over there. It's like Deadwood carving or something. It's all about like hand tool techniques. So I just quickly realized that like the Dremel, just like you've got knob cutters and you've got trunk splitters, you don't want to use trunk splitters to like cut roots, and you don't want to use knob cutters to split branches. It's just they have like a specific use. So I kind of learned that with like the Dremel and then hand tools. And I've just been heavily studying the best application of both versus just only using one. Is that all? Again, I feel like I just
that makes a ton of sense. No, that's perfect. So you had shared with me, well, I saw your work on Bjorn, on Bonsai-U, right? Where you did that episode for Bjorn, and the detail was insane. I mean, I don't know how long you spent on that tree. It must have been 40 hours or something like that. I don't know, but
it was like, over 20. It was like, excuse me. It was like two full days, maybe not, maybe just under 20. But man, I think I reflect on that, and that was an incredible experience. Again, that happened. I was in so disbelief that I was like given this opportunity to work on this tree.
Yeah, that's so cool.
It's collected by Dan from the Backcountry Boys, like estimated 400 to 500 years, maybe more. And there was just this like, I'm going to work on this tree. Like, really? Okay. So all that to say, I took my time. Now I could probably I could have gotten a lot more work done on that tree. But Bjorn specifically told me that he just wanted to focus on this one section, which was like a new potential front, where it was a newer stretch of Deadwood that didn't have like all the fissures and really deep cracks in it. And so the whole objective of that was to tie in
faster and make it more.
Yeah, at least just like visually look like it's around the same age. Cause you literally had this like really deep fissures and then just like a bald spot that went down the side of the trunk. So I spent 2.5 days with hand chisels finding the grain lines and just like accentuating them, carving them, adding some myself. But yeah, that was a crazy experience, and I'm really grateful for it.
Yeah. Your explanation of having done a lot of drawing when you were younger or as a kid or whatever, like having done drawing, that makes a lot of sense now to me. Especially when you shared that PDF with me of, you had shown what the different bits, like what kind of cuts they leave on the wood, right? And you just spray painted or you painted the board black, and then you obviously remove material with the different bits, and so it shows up as this like stark white of the pine or whatever wood underneath. That's a really clever thing to do, because it's so hard to, especially if you didn't like paint the board. It's almost like you're doing, what do they do when they like make those stamps, like where they chisel out the stamps, and then like they dip
like
them
in letterpressing or lithograph.
Yes. Lithography. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That reminded me of that, where that made it so much clearer of like, oh, this is what these different bits do. And I'll try to find a way to share this out with folks via the podcast. But that guide you shared with me was super, super helpful and helped me understand like where do each of these bits, what place do they play, the hand tools as well as the bits for the Dremels. So that was really helpful.
Well, good.
Is that like something you like? Where did you get that idea from to do the carving bits on the painted wood?
Well, it kind of came through product of doing the video with Bjorn. Like the whole goal of that was he had seen some trees of my own personal collection that I brought to class that I had carved myself, and he was really impressed with them. And that's when he was like, man, jokingly, he was like, I may have to do a video of you and your carving. I was just like, yeah, sure, cool. And then like he actually was like, no, we're going to do this thing. And so the plan was that I was going to use a Dremel and carve the juniper. But as soon as I got to that tree and I realized how old it was, and like the way that the Deadwood the grain snaked like this, I immediately realized there's no way I'm going to put a Dremel on this tree, because the second I lose, an anchor point or something and the Dremel skips and I go like vertical, it's over, game over. So I realized like this is a job only for hand tools. Anyways, we still wanted to kind of like talk or cover how and best ways or bits to use in Dremel carving. And I kind of had that idea of just like, man, I don't think we really hit the mark. And people, I know I would be asking if I saw the video of like, that's really cool, but what bit are you using? Like, I can't see what that is. So I just felt it was necessary to kind of like put as much information out of like, these are the bits that I'm using when I'm using the Dremel. And also to save people the time and wasted money that I didn't have, because I can't even tell you how many bits I bought and tools that I used once and immediately realized like, well, that's farts. That's not useful at all. So hopefully the thing with the PDF is just to like, it gives you a good little starting, like a launch pad of like, you can cover a lot of ground and a lot of techniques if you get these.
Yep. That's so helpful for folks. I mean, it's not even limited to bonsai. Like any hobby that you get into, having those like experienced practitioners who have actually have the hands-on experience that can give you the kind of like, here's the tools I would skip, here's what I would use. And then like also connecting that to a visualization of like the actual impact the tool has. So helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely have a lot more carving tools than I need. That it's like, yeah, exactly. There's a bunch of like one and done bits and things like that I'd never come back to.
Yeah.
So how did you decide you wanted to like specialize in carving or get that deep into it? Like you just saw carved trees from Will or something and you were really impressed, or,
Yep.
How did you decide you wanted to do that?
Well, it was that. And then I was also looking at like the material I had in my garden at the time, and, not a lot of movement, but accidentally killed this branch or this trunk line or whatever. And that's when I think it was really Harry Harrington and Will too. It's like you see, Harry Harrington has these 2 books, Bonsai Inspirations 1 and 2. I can't recommend enough. Buy them. They're like $30 online. I think one might be out of print now, but he has these really phenomenal multi-year progressions. And there's a couple of them that just focus on like the Deadwood aspect of this tree that wasn't really a showstopper, but it was what he did with the Deadwood, that the Deadwood became the feature of the tree. And that's what made the tree special. And a lot of those are like privets and used, because they have those like galore in the UK. And it was just kind of like something clicked of like, wow, man, if I have something that's like kind of humble material, I can make it more interesting if I approach the Deadwood manipulation. And I really like think it through. I don't just like go to town on carving it, but I like put a lot of thought into it. And it was really, there's this one tree. I bought it it wasn't even a club auction. We just had, we call them chop and chats. It's not trademarked, but like members show up and you work on your trees. And sometimes if you have a tree or two you want to sell, you bring it. And if someone buys it, blah, blah, blah. And there was a guy in the club that had a honeysuckle that he had collected in his backyard. And I'll send you, I meant to send you an image of this. Actually, it's in my Instagram feed. Like if you scroll down, that was the tree that started it all for me. And I remember distinctively because I was just sopping up all this Deadwood information from Harry and Will, that the moment I saw this honeysuckle, I was like, this tree gives me the opportunity to practice, because it was like a flat cut and it was probably 15 inches of just like cylindrical Deadwood with a flat cut. But all the like, if this is the tree, all the foliage was like first third. The top was just dead branches. And I was like, man, I've got like 6 to 8 inches of runway to just like learn how to do grain lines, learn how to put movement, how to do a hollow, whatever. And I went to town on that tree over the period of a couple of months. Like I did it in stages. Like I kind of gave myself the task of like, okay, I want to learn how to do this. So I just practiced that. And then while I'm doing that, I'm also learning like, well, this bit doesn't work. This one gets me there. And I'm really happy with how that tree turned out. And it's kind of like this like time capsule of me setting an intention of learning how to do something and taking my time with it. And I learned so much. And I paid $40. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to sell it because it taught me so much, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's like, I guess while we're talking about
That's one of your signature trees now, right?
I guess so. Yeah. I hope to show it someday. It really took a hit last summer. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it missed a watering, if it dried out, but like I lost one of the apical branches on it. So it's going to take a full redesign. That happens. It's a good challenge. But I guess one of the things I want to make sure I don't skim over is that, like, for anyone out there that's interested in deadwood carving if you're interested in deadwood carving, just like I recommended, get a tree that's in refinement that pushes you to learn new techniques. Buy a humble tree, go to the back 40 in a nursery that has, find a tree that has a lot of deadwood on it and use that as like your training method. Like find material that gives you opportunities with low stakes to practice certain techniques. That's what I did. And I think it worked out pretty well because it made me want to only get better. And I was pretty happy with how it turned out. So,
yeah. I wonder why we don't see much good at least my POV is that we don't see a lot of good carving on deadwood in the US for bonsai trees, which is surprising to me because it's like we have wood carving. So I'm curious if wood carving is very different or there's just no crossover between like people who carve wood and people who do bonsai. Because you see that with like ceramics, right? Like we have great ceramics.
Yeah.
And like people cross over from doing pottery like Michael Hagedorn and get into bonsai and make great bonsai pots. But I don't see a ton of great carving in the US. So yeah, I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
No, that's a really good question. Like I've thought about this too. And from my experience and from what knowledge I have, like, I think if Austin Heisman were to like go down the deadwood carving path, he would be phenomenal because he understands wood and the grain and how it works. Because that is something I think a lot of people that don't think about when they want to get into carving. And I get it. I didn't when I first got into it, but I think it's really important is that you can just go to town and just start carving on a piece of deadwood or whatever. But what's going to happen is, and I learned this from Will firsthand. It was like a really big moment for me is that he explained to me, it's like, if you're not working with the grain of that tree, and all trees have different grain behavior, the way they weather, the way they split. Some have twists, some have slight movement, some are straight grained. If you go against that or do anything that deviates from the original grain of that tree, it may look really good that year you carve it, but in a couple of years, as that grain expands and contracts because of heat and moisture and whatever, the tree's grain lines are naturally going to start showing itself, and the work you did, if you didn't pay attention to that, starts to become glaringly obvious. And then you're going to have to either leave it for what it is and not care, or you're going to have to go back and like redo what you did. And sometimes if you remove too much, there is no redoing. It's almost permanent, you know? So I guess what I'm trying to say is that, like, again, if anyone is interested in deadwood, I would challenge you to also study how wood rots and ages and different grain patterns of different species. And this is something, dude, I'm like smack dab in the middle of learning myself, is like, well, you can't just handle a yew the same way you would, here's a better. You wouldn't carve a conifer the same as you would a deciduous tree because they have two different qualities. Like most conifers have a higher tannin content, especially yews, especially junipers. And then you have deciduous trees that have a lot less tannin. I can't say little to none, but a lot less. And that aspect alone changes how that deadwood ages. Most deciduous trees are going to rot and hollow from the inside. You see it in nature every day. And that's something you can lean into when you're carving deciduous trees. When it comes to junipers, yews, pines, it's a completely different ball game. for junipers in particular, what's tricky about them is that they have so much movement in their deadwood. It's really hard to replicate that movement and not make it look hand done.
Contrived.
Yeah, contrived. And that's where hand tools, from my experience, it's the only way to work juniper deadwood is, modified pliers or chisels. And then that's where like sandblaster comes in. But yeah, sorry. I go on these sidebars, man. I get excited talking about this stuff.
So that's very interesting. I guess in traditional wood carving, like on an inanimate piece of wood, like they kind of lock in the results, right? Like once you've carved the thing, you're sealing it or whatever, right? But
it's not sitting in the elements. It's not outside getting all the seasons.
It's not getting watered every day. Yeah, exactly.
That does so much. Like that, getting wet,
the UV
drying out,
and the water,
the heat. It's really a beautiful thing when you think about it, at least I do, is like, just as, Ryan Neal says this all the time, and it really resonated with me, and it's always in the back of my head of like, when you're working on a tree, it's a conversation. It's like you have these ideas, this design you want to do, and then you have what the tree is giving you, and then you meet in the middle, and then you accomplish, you step back, and you let the tree respond. Like I totally try to live by that in my practice. And I also treat that with deadwood, where it's like, it's dead, but it still ages. It still responds. And so like, you have an opportunity to do a design or a technique or a hollow or whatever, but in time, you're going to have to come back around, and that's going to change. And that's another opportunity to take it the next step, or leave it, let it rot, and naturally do its thing, I don't know, I'm fascinated by it. I think it's really cool. And again, like you said, there's not a lot of people doing it, which is interesting to me, but I also understand it because it's a niche within a niche.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just surprising to me because you hear so much about the other crossovers like stand making or pottery making, right? Or kusamono accent plant making, right? So yeah, I'm hoping we see more people, and I dabble with it a little bit because I want to make like cool juniper gin whenever I'm making like shohin junipers and stuff like that. Those like twisty kind of thin like deadwoods. Yeah, I mean that's a little bit different than carving, right? It's like I guess
it's still
kind of
deadwood
carving,
manipulation.
Yeah.
I like to think of, instead of just carving, like we do carve, but I think about it of like we're manipulating deadwood,
sculpting. Yeah.
Sculpting. That's even a better word than manipulating. Yeah.
Yeah. Super cool. So what's the biggest, like you teach classes now, what's the biggest rookie mistake that you see whenever people, either start with a power tool or even hand tools whenever they're looking at making deadwood?
Removing too much too quickly, but especially with the Dremel. Like there are certain bits, a couple that are on that PDF. There's a company called Saber Tooth. It's like Saber with 2 R's. I learned of them through Will Badley, and like they have the best burring bits, which is basically it's like a bit that can remove a lot of wood really quickly, but you can also use them not just like for bulk removal, but also for design, like in channeling out movement or creating a hollow. They'll do those really, really quickly. But, if you drop your RPMs down a little bit on the Dremel, you can also do some like detailed work with them. Anyways, you put those in the hands of someone that doesn't have a lot of confidence or skill with a Dremel, and all the wood that you could have manipulated or sculpted is gone. That happens real quick when you're working with power tools. So I have to try my best to like curb that up ahead of just like, hey, let's start on a section for practice that we know is not going to be in the end design, and get familiar with this bit. See what it does. Really go in there with it. See how quickly you can remove wood. See how far in you can bore it. And then let's talk about what we want to do with it.
Because, on the actual section that's going to be in the tree.
Yeah, because you can't undo it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good feedback. Yeah, I think anybody who's inspired by this, like your marching orders are go find a stump, a cheap stump that somebody's selling. All the time I see trees for sale that like somebody just doesn't want to deal with the carving, and they're selling it cheap. And so there's a lot of bonsai trees that can transform from this kind of less desirable material into something really compelling, right? Because deadwood done well is so cool, right? Like,
yeah.
carved or natural, like it's just such a compelling experience for folks, and really helps you feel like you're seeing this old tree in a forest or in a field, right? And so it's a really compelling outcome that you get from being able to do it well, right?
Yeah, and on deciduous, like one of the easiest things you can do that's a lot easier than like trying to carve movement and put a lot of high detail grain lines, fissures and stuff is create a hollow. Like take a section of the tree that's dead, or create a section that's dead on a boring, straight section or whatever, and create a hollow. And as long as you get it deep enough, and the most important thing is you don't just bore a hole into it. You got to bore into it. But once you get in, you're going to kind of spread it from the inside so that there's like a lip on the outside, which will create like a natural sense of shadow. And it like makes you, so it's really hard to like verbally explain, but
no, it makes sense. I think on the first time I got introduced to carving, I think also was Harry Harrington, and I think he had some Bonsai Empire videos that I subscribed to, and he had like a sub lesson that was on carving, and he explained that technique of like you need to play with shadow to create good deadwood, and like the three dimensionality of these hollows is super important. So it makes perfect sense. I think it's cool to see. You mentioned also earlier about like the aging, how like you have to learn how deadwood ages. And I read this book one time that had like they had outlined like 4 stages of deadwood aging, right? Where it's like it starts out like flat, and then it starts to crack, and then
that's the French's Jecker
the cracks
book.
Break up. Oh, that is okay.
That is.
Yeah, it's really cool,
dude. It's incredible. That was a big moment for me too when I first saw that, of just like, yes, that is what happens. And like it happens with time naturally. Our job, if we choose to, is how do we recreate that, but make it look as realistic as possible. And most times it's, you do a little bit, but you let the natural weathering do the rest. And that
so
actually,
it's like you're kind of you're like speeding up the process, but
exactly.
you're not getting to the end result. Like you're almost cheapening the end result if you go there right away, right? You need that natural, like deadwood has to age a little bit, the carving, before it's finished.
Yeah, I mean, just like, mochikomi, and I've never seen a tree with mochikomi because I've never been to Japan. I've seen older trees here, but like, and I don't know if I can say that with full confidence, but like, I think I would understand mochikomi more if I went to Japan and seen a tree that's been in a pot for 75 years that was collected, that where it's settled in. Like, I think that there is an aspect of that with deadwood as well, that it just takes time to get there. Like we do these small actions seasonally, biannually, whatever, that kind of expedites that. But like, you're never going to make deadwood look like it's been there for 1,000 years. Sorry, not 1,000, hundreds of years out the gate, and it look 100% natural. Sandblaster does help with that. But the thing I wanted to add before I totally forget is, going back to, you said, what are the mistakes that I've seen people do? This isn't so much a mistake. It's just like an understanding that was really big for me when I learned, is that like once you do deadwood work on, especially deciduous tree, is there's this mentality of like, oh, I got to preserve it. I gotta put like wood hardener on it. I got to lime sulfur it, or else it's gonna rot. Like, yes, there is some truth in that. However, if you carve freshly carved deadwood on a deciduous and even a juniper, you don't want to immediately lock that in. You can, but what you're robbing yourself of is like what we were just talking about with the seasons, Mother Nature doing its thing, which is getting wet, drying out, heating up, expanding, contracting, expanding, contracting. So if you freshly carve a deciduous tree and then you immediately put PC petrifier on it, it's going to lock that in and it's going to stay that same way. Whereas if you carve it and you let it sit at least one full calendar year, experience all the seasons, and then you come in and protect it after that, the tree and the grain and the deadwood is naturally going to like open up a little bit more. And it's going to hopefully it's going to complement the work you did and make it look even more natural, or it's not. If you went to town. Yeah, that's just like a thing that I tell my students and people in workshops is the first thing they want to do is like, so should I have lime salt for this when I get home or put PC petrifier on it? It's like, no, don't. Like, it's not like this wood is going to just rot and fall off in a year. Wood, another thing that I enjoy teaching, because I'm realizing that it's just not as common as it should or could be, is wood will rot, but it's a long process. There are certain things that accelerate that rotting process, the main one being water. So if you have a tree that has a piece of deadwood, either it's a chunk of deadwood, it's a branch, or it's a whole side of a trunk. If there is a pocket in that tree or that deadwood where water is pulling up, that's how a tree hollows in the nature. And because water collects and it continues to rot, and it rots from the inside all the way through to the core. So one of the first things you have to do in preserving deadwood for longevity is you got to remove any and all punky, pithy wood, because that wood, once it gets to that stage of punkiness and it's pithy, which is like if you take a toothpick or any you could use a chopstick, any kind of like semi-hard tool, and if you poke it and it sinks into that wood, it's punky. When it gets to that stage, it's basically a sponge. It will never go back to being hard. It will only continue to imbibe water and soak up. And what does that do? It's expanding from the inside.
Yeah,
and
it like is an infection almost.
Exactly. It slowly turns, any deadwood around it is going to eventually turn punky. Whereas if the first thing you do is you remove all that punky wood, you scrape it out, you can suck it out with a vacuum, whatever, you get it all out. Say you had like a pocket of punky wood in the middle of non-punky but dead wood. You take that punkiness out, well then air comes in and light or heat and the elements, and it will dry out what was surrounded by punky wood, and it will preserve it long term. So yeah, don't preserve your deadwood immediately. And I always make the corniest joke ever, but I'm always like, get the punk out of my face. Get the punk out of my... Like, get the punky wood out, because that's going to be a very simple...
I'm going to have to clip that and add that at the beginning of the podcast.
Please don't. I can't believe I just did it, but whatever.
It's recorded now. No, I'm just teasing. Those are great tips. I didn't know about my natural inclination would have been, like, try to treat your deadwood right as soon as you do the carving, right? But that's counterintuitive to your whole philosophy, or that's counter to your whole philosophy, which is, you're helping to accentuate the grain and understanding and working with the tree. It's not just you imposing your vision, even though you've thought about it ahead of time, like what you're going to do. You are responding to what the tree has given you and making a partnership with the tree, almost where with the tree or with the elements, right? Where you're saying, I'm going to do a little bit and you're going to do a little bit. And then that's going to be the result that we're aiming for this design. It's really cool to hear about that. And I
was going to say, Mother Nature makes the best deadwood and trees. So lean on it. Do some of the work, and then let Mother Nature chip in and help you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this has been a super fun conversation. I hope it's been good for you. I would love to, any kind of final thoughts you want to leave folks with, and then also how can folks see your work or connect with you? It would be awesome to have you come out to California at some point to do a carving workshop out here. We'll have to talk about that in the future too. But yeah, how can folks connect with you, and where, and any kind of final thoughts you want to leave folks with?
Yeah, well, final thoughts. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Addison. Again, I'm a huge fan. I think you are contributing so much to the bonsai multiverse, the community at large here in America, and super inspiring, challenges me. I'm learning. So I just have to tip my hat to you, because I know you spend a lot of time that goes unthought to just make this thing that we just consume. I know me, I get excited. I'm just like, a new episode, bam. But I'm always aware that it's you've got a couple of hours, if not more, in every episode, and the thought you put into it. So thank you for that. I don't think I have anything that I didn't cover or want to teach. I guess there is one thing, and it goes kind of back to the very beginning. I think unfortunately we've missed the window for it, but that is the Ben Oki Scholarship. For all you people who have been studying, I think it's under 10 years, which is I think a lot of us qualify for that. You can apply for this thing called the Ben Oki Scholarship from the California Bonsai Society. Thanks, God bless Robert Pressler. He's the one. There's some really good interviews with him where he talks about how he pushed for this Ben Oki Scholarship with the California club, and they've been doing it for, I think it's over 10 years maybe now. Hopefully I get that right. But all you have to do is write a short couple of paragraphs about where you are in your bonsai journey, and then if you were to win the scholarship, what you would do with it. And they award 2 people, each get $1,000. I did it. I still can't believe I won it. It's what helped pay for the rest of my education with Bjorn. So it changed my trajectory in this in ways that I can't imagine where I would be if I didn't have that opportunity. And it's free. All you have to do is email them. I think they do it in May of every year. And then they announce
I just checked. It's open until May 30th. So
well, there you go.
This episode will come out before May 30th. So anybody listening, you've got a few days left to apply. So that's a really awesome story. If anybody's listening from the scholarship, I'm sure they're jazzed to hear this story of look at this impact that this has had on the bonsai community. And Ben would obviously be very, very, honored, I'm sure. What did you do as your kind of give back from your experience?
It was to continue my studies and then to teach what I learned. It was awesome. Like to continue my studies with Bjorn and then share that knowledge. And also I think I put something in there about Deadwood carving, wanting awesome. To get better at that delivered. And then share. So, yeah.
Awesome. Sorry, you were going to say one more thing, I think.
Well, I was just going to say, you said it's May 30th. I don't know when this comes out, but I did mine, I think literally 2 days before the deadline. I sat myself down one evening and I spent like a couple hours and I wrote it and I submitted it. And here I am.
Here you are.
So you can do it.
Yeah, the organizers don't care which day it's submitted on as long as it's before the deadline, apparently. That's good. Hey, that's the call. That's the call to action for this episode. Everybody, if you have the same spark that we've seen in Drew and you want to continue your education, but you're blocked, like this could be the, both the financial help as well as the kind of responsibility or the, you have that commitment from the scholarship to help you push yourself.
Yeah. Hold your intentions accountable or help hold your intention accountable. And then Addison, I did realize I didn't answer the other question is how.
Oh, yeah. How can folks connect with you? Yeah.
I'm only on Instagram. I do have aspirations to build a website at some point. For me, it's like that sounds like a great winter project because it's really hard to sit behind a computer when trees are growing. But yeah, on Instagram, just my name, Drew Binkley. Always aspire to be more active on social media, but it is a challenge because every time I get on, the algorithm is showing me things I do not care to see. And sometimes I get a little fed up with it and I'm just like, I'm done. But anyways, I hope to be a little bit more active. But yeah, I'm on there. And through that, I don't know if my email is on that, but we'll just hit me up on Instagram if anyone has questions or wants to say, hey, hopefully the goal would be get a website up. I'm really big into like photographing progressions, and I'm really trying to use this opportunity with study groups and my teaching opportunities to show like good before and afters of not just Deadwood, but also styling, because I don't want to just be known as like the Deadwood guy, although that's cool. But I also, I'm also like, I really aspire to be good at styling and working with multiple species.
Yeah, and just doing bonsai.
Yeah, just doing bonsai, not just this one part of it. But yeah.
Super cool. Are you open to doing kind of like travel for club workshops and stuff like 100%. That, or study groups? Or okay, cool.
Absolutely.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely have to talk for kind of our schedule next year. But
yeah,
awesome, Drew. This was super fun.
Yeah,
we met in person briefly at I think at
you were
BE,
so
right?
busy, man. Like you were,
it was
you were on
intense.
stage, you were emceeing, you were killing it. But I remember just being like, I can't have a conversation, but I can watch him do his thing. It was great, but it was good to meet you.
Yeah. I'm sorry we didn't get to talk more,
Dude,
but
all
definitely
good.
at the next
All
one.
good.
And I'm looking forward to our paths crossing for a long time in the future. So thank you so
100%.
much for kind of coming on the show and talking through your journey with us. And I'm even more jazzed about kind of taking another crack at Deadwood carving in the future.
If ever you have any questions, Addison, feel free to, I was going to say,
Pester you?
Well, hit me up.
I'll do it.
Let me know, dude.
For sure.
I'll hop on FaceTime. I can't offer this service to everyone listening, but Addison, since you put the time in on this, like, I'm here for you in any capacity, man.
There you hear it. The benefits of being a podcast host.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Drew. Thanks again.
Absolutely.